Mark, it is a privilege and an honor to speak with you today.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks for coming.
As part of Young Investor Society. I'm James Fletcher. I'm the founder of Young Investor Society.
Congrats.
And we have Mark Cuban, who needs no introduction. He's the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, a Shark Tank star, and just a personal hero of mine.
Well,
an
you
investor
should set
and
your
a
sights a
business
lot higher, but yeah.
And this is Grant Williams with me. Grant is one of the all-star teenagers of Young Investor Society.
Congrats.
And he was one of our finalists.
Grant, you look like you're about 30 years old. You sure you're a teenager?
Yep, I'm sure.
Okay.
I'm only 18. Yeah, okay. Well,
I'll kick it off to
fire
Grant
away.
to start away.
All right. Well, I'm here on behalf of all the Young Investor Society students who wanted to be here. And I just want to take the time to thank you for sharing your wisdom and giving back to us. So we're really excited to have you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. We'll see if it's wisdom after you're done, right? But
Okay, so should we start?
Yeah.
First question?
Yeah.
Okay, well, first question. If you can remember back to when you were kind of my age, did you think you would have all of this?
oh yeah, absolutely. No. I had no idea. I grew up in Pittsburgh. My dad did upholstery on cars, so if you got a rip in your car seat, you took it to him. My mom had odd jobs from selling real estate to making baskets, and I was just a normal kid, but I was always into business. From as long as I could remember, I was selling something or working on something, trying to make money, and it just got me excited to be a business person, and it just took off from there.
That's awesome. I mean, you mentioned that from a young age that you realized you wanted to be a business owner. Could you maybe pinpoint kind of exactly when?
Oh boy. I mean, I remember being 9 years old and buying and selling baseball cards. Being in Pittsburgh, we were all big Pittsburgh Pirates fans. And so I would collect cards and then I would repackage them so that the ones I didn't like, I would sell to somebody else so I can use that to make more money. I mean, I've told the story a million times about selling garbage bags door to door. I mean, I shoveled driveways, you name it. I mean, I realized that if I was willing to work, there was somebody willing to pay me to do the work. And that's what helped me understand. I joined Junior Achievement. That helped me learn. I was sophomore and junior in high school, and we sold cookie trays. We would get a piece of aluminum that was cut, and then we would crimp it, and then literally would go everywhere. And one of our advisors would take me. It was I forget the name of it. It was a steel company, and I would just go to everybody, and I'd put on the puppy dog face. You really need a cookie plate, don't you, right? And sell it for whatever. And yeah, and Junior Achievement allowed me to start to understand the structure of a company, right? There was a president, a secretary, vice presidents, sales, expenses, balance sheets, accounting, all those, which really helped me accelerate my learning.
So I was reading your book, and one of your mantras I'd love your thoughts on is you said it doesn't matter whether the glass is half full or the glass is half empty.
Right.
It just matters that you're
Who's
pouring
the water.
Who's pouring the water. And you were talking about controlling your own destiny.
Yep.
So talk about that. So talk about how you get from A to B and how you can control your destiny. I thought that was just a great point.
We all have ideas and we all have business concepts where we think, okay, this is a great idea. And we all go through that same process. You have the idea.
Yeah.
You get excited about it. You get that feeling in your stomach, right? Then you go tell all your friends and they say, oh, it's a great idea. Then you go to Google and you look it up, right? And you get all excited because, oh, that's not really anything like it. And you convince yourself. But then the key part is what happens next. And so I've always been of the attitude that I want to be prepared. I'm not a risk taker, despite what people think. And I avoid risk by trying to know more about what I'm trying to do than anybody. Like I literally, back when I was 15, 16, I was collecting stamps. And that was another one of my businesses. And I would go to stamp shows in Pittsburgh, and I would take advantage of the variances in pricing from one stamp dealer to the next. So I'd say this, I'd buy this, literally I went in one day with a quarter, bought something for a quarter and turned that into $50, right? Because I put in the work to understand the stamp market, what stamps, what they were priced at. And I try to approach all my businesses the same way, whether it's the Mavericks or being 12 or being 16. You're always going to compete. 99.9999% of the times you're going to be competing with somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to want to do the same thing as you or try to do it better. What is it that you can do to be prepared so that you know your industry, you know your business better than anybody? Because if somebody else knows it better than you, that means they're outworking you. And the one thing, I talk about, pouring the water. I also talk about the one thing in life you can control is your efforts.
Yeah.
Right? You can learn more about something than anybody else.
Yeah.
So the question was, are you born creative? Are you born an entrepreneur? Or, can you figure that out yourself? And the reality is you can figure it out yourself. Most people do a lot of talking and most people don't put in the effort. There's nothing you can accomplish in life with the right amount of work. The challenge is, are you willing to do the work? And the reality is most people aren't, but that's the opportunity, right? It's like people at school. Most people are lazy, right? They barely get through it. And so that creates opportunity. And if you're willing to outwork people, outthink people, invest time. And then the next question is, what did I do? What can you do to learn?
Yep.
And the key is, right, read, right? You can read my book. There's books by entrepreneurs. There's books about business. The more you can learn about business, the better the opportunity, the better the advantages you're going to create for yourself. There's no secret sauce. There's no shortcuts. Getting a mentor isn't going to all of a sudden just propel you to the top. You've got to figure things out for yourself, and the younger you start, the better the advantages you'll have.
Do you have a list of books that you would recommend for them to read?
In terms of books I recommend, all of them. Literally, anything that you think is interesting that relates to business, read it. I tried to find books about entrepreneurs when I was young. I tried to find books about businesses. All my friends thought I was crazy. Why are you reading this? Why are you reading that? And it's because I enjoyed it. So, regardless, you don't have to read the right books. If you read the things that are interesting to you, then you'll find things that you like to do. And once you find something you like to do, the goal is, can you be good at it? And if you can be good at it, then the next goal is, can you be great at it? And great things happen when you're great at something.
Let me read this question from KP. So this is Jason's question, and he says, on Shark Tank, you are faced with a variety of businesses. When you evaluate each business, what is it that you are looking for?
Here's how Shark Tank works. When they come in and stand on the carpet and pitch us, on TV it's like 15 minutes. In real life, it can go on for 2 hours. And so when someone comes in, I'm looking for something that's unique, that stands out, that can grow. I'm looking for an entrepreneur that is committed to their business, that lives, eats, sleeps, and breathes their business, and really has a unique advantage. One of the questions we always like to ask is, what is it that is compelling about your business? What is it that differentiates you from everybody else? And, it's shocking sometimes, but it's hard for them to give an answer to that question. If you can't honestly say, this is what makes my company different, then you're not going to get an investment. That's key to what I look for.
Can you talk more about that? Because we teach kids at Young Investor Society how to analyze a business, and we do it through the stock market and companies that they're looking at. And the big question is, what is the competitive advantage?
Right.
And what is that differentiation? And I think you in your book said you're kind of wired to look for that differentiation. What do you look for? Elaborate on that.
We're all consumers. We all buy things all the time, right? I like to eat 7-Eleven hot dogs. Why do I go to 7-Eleven instead of somewhere else? The Mavs, we're just one more entertainment opportunity. Why would somebody come to a Mavs game as opposed to going to a movie, right? And so when we talk about the Mavs, when people think about going to sporting events, and I'll use this as an example, you don't remember the jump shots after a while. You don't remember the home runs. You don't remember the touchdowns. You don't remember the score. You remember the experience. Yeah. We remember who took us. Our first game with our mom or our dad. We remember how we felt when we won that game. Going to a sporting event, it's one of the few places where you're allowed to stand up and scream at the top of your lungs, and you're encouraged to scream as loud as you want. And if someone hits a game-winning jumper, you're hugging people and high-fiving people you've never seen in your life and you'll never see again. Yeah. And you're walking out of the arena, singing and chanting and screaming. And if you lose that game, you're bummed out, and the entire city or the entire school can be bummed out. So when we sell the Mavericks, we don't sell basketball. We sell unique experiences. And so you've got to understand in your business exactly what the differentiation is and what the compelling aspect of that business is. But think about what you do as a consumer. What is it that makes you make the choices that you make? Why do you buy a certain thing? Why do you shop a certain place? Why do you go to a certain website? Those are the keys.
So we're talking about success in business, and obviously you've had successful businesses, and some have been more successful than others. Right. Could you maybe share like a common thread or a pattern you see between the businesses that have been more successful than?
Yeah, I mean the most successful businesses have people who love what they're doing, who don't look at it as a job, who don't. When people always ask, what do I have to do to be successful working for you? And my answer is always the same. If you reduce my stress, and if you reduce the stress of your fellow workers, and if you reduce the stress of your customers, you're going to be successful, right? Because we all look for ways to make our life better, make our life easier, and reducing stress, coming up with a more compelling product, just making it so that my best business is, solve problems, reduce stress, make people's lives easier. Because that's what we all look for, right? In school, you want to get through class, you want to get good grades, and you're looking for the best way to do that. When you start a business, you want to make your customers happy. You want to make it so that they don't think about going anywhere else. But again, you always got to think about your own consumer experiences. What is it that you look for? And that tends to guide you. Would you buy from your own company? And you got to be honest with yourself, because not all companies are going to be great, but my most successful companies understand that.
So we have a question from Twitter, from Andy, and it is, when you invested in the Dallas Mavericks, when you bought ownership, did you think of it as an investment, or was it just to have fun because that value has increased a lot since you've taken ownership?
No, when I bought the Mavs, it was to have fun. I was very, very fortunate financially, and I've been a basketball junkie my entire life. I mean, I literally I played pickup today at lunchtime, right? And so I just love the game. And so the idea that I could come in and buy the Mavs, and I mean, within my first week, I was playing Dirk one-on-one, and I won. Now, I got up 2-1 and I quit, but that's a different. Before a game, I'll go out there and I'll go on the court and I'll shoot. That's still, all these years later, just the coolest thing ever. I mean, owning a team, someone hits a game-winning jumper, I get to run on the court, pile on, and not get arrested. You guys would get arrested. So just, buying the Mavs was very personal to me, and it was more exciting than a business.
So tell us about a mistake, or tell us about an example of an investment that failed.
I mean, I've had lots of investments that have failed. I mean, on Shark Tank, sometimes one of the challenges as an investor is sometimes entrepreneurs who take investments think that they've accomplished something by getting an investor, right? They get on Shark Tank, they get money from us or from me, and they think, okay, I've made it, right? Yeah. Getting an investment isn't the end, it's the beginning, right? It doesn't reduce your problems, it increases your obligations and responsibilities. That's why I tell people, don't take an investor unless you have absolutely no choice, right? Sweat equity is the best equity, because once you take my money, you better work your ass off, right?
Yeah.
And so the companies that have failed on Shark Tank, and I've invested, I think, in 71, and I think about 10% have failed, about 15, 20% have done really, really well, and the rest are in the middle, one way or the other. Some people they get on the show and they think, I don't have to work anymore, I don't have to work as hard, or if I get an investor, it'll be easier, and it never works that way. Or they stop paying attention to detail, right? I've had a couple companies where it's like, all right, I'll hire people to do all the work. It's your company. Yeah. It's your baby. Yeah. Yeah. You've got to do, if you're not going to do the work, who is? And I've always felt, in terms of leadership, that my job is to put everybody around me in a position to succeed. And if I'm walking around the arena here, I'm picking up junk on the ground. I'm, helping customers. I'm trying to, convey to everybody that there's not a job that you would do that I wouldn't do myself. And a lot of entrepreneurs that fail, they lose track of that. They think, I'm the boss. I mean, I had a job one time, and I was a horrible employee, where the president of the company spent more time telling me how I should dress than trying to help me close sales.
Yeah.
So you've got to do the work,
Yeah.
and that's key.
I have a question, I guess, as a father and as a leader to youth is, how do you teach work ethic? So one of your themes is you have to work. You have 3 kids, and
I tell my
how
kids,
do you teach them to work?
I tell my kids that A, if they want something, they're going to have to earn it.
Yeah.
And B, if they don't work hard enough to earn it, I'm going to sell them off as medical experiments. That's the line in our house, right? I'm going to sell you off as medical experiments. You need money? Okay, we'll sell you off as a medical experiment. We can get you money that way. I'll go give blood. Dad, I'm 7. I don't care.
All right, so I was reading in your book, and I noticed you wrote a list earlier in your life, like of all your favorite industries you'd want to work for, or that you saw potential in.
Right.
So if you were to rewrite that list today, what industries would be on that list? What would you add or take away?
I would tell you that the number one thing that's going to dominate, by the time these guys are 5 years out of college, everything is going to be dominated by artificial intelligence. Period, end of story. That while learning to program is important because it trains you in logic and understanding technology, that we are about to go through the greatest technological change in the history of the world over the next 10 years. When I first got started, we automated physical processes, right? We would, back in the day, you would write things in a ledger to keep your accounting books, right?
Yeah.
Then you used a spreadsheet to automate that. Then we connected PCs together and we put them into networks. And then the internet connected all those networks together and we got the network effect. Then we started apps like Snapchat and Facebook and Musical.ly and Lively and everything else that took advantage of that network effect to connect everybody. Now, and people wrote the software to do it. Now we're going to automate the process of automation. And so 15 years from now, there may not be any programmers, right? 15 years from now, we'll have a lot of intelligence that will be doing the thinking for us. And so if software doesn't work for you, if you have a job working for software, you're in trouble, right? If you have a job creating or having software work for you, you've got a chance. And so everybody out there, understanding, start learning the technology of neural networks, artificial intelligence. And it sounds really, really hard, but it's really not, right? And like I was just reading about some apps that use artificial intelligence to create music. And so I forget I wish I remember what it was called. But just playing with apps like that, Tensor from Google, there's so many different ways that it's going to change their future. So
We have a question from Hawaii, and it said, if you weren't in the career you are now, what is an alternative career you would consider to go into?
just what I just said. If I was starting right now, just going to college, I would be taking every class I possibly could related to artificial intelligence, neural networks, machine learning, computer vision, all those things. And if I would find a way to create a company, or get a job for a company as a sales rep, a tech geek, whatever it may be, because the world is going to change in ways we never possibly imagined over the next 10 years. And it's going to be scary in some respects because a lot of people are going to get caught off guard. I think it's going to change college majors dramatically.
Yeah.
Right now we kind of poo-poo all the liberal arts and say that's not a good major because you're not going to make your money back. But at the same time, having a different viewpoint and a knowledge that's not traditionally technical, I think in an artificial intelligence-driven world and a neural network world, that's going to be of huge benefit. So if you understand that's the tech side, the neural networks, et cetera, having a diverse knowledge base is going to be really to your advantage in a big way. And again, it's going to be very dramatic. And so in one way it's exciting, and in another way it's very scary.
Yeah, yeah. When you sold Micro Solutions for a couple $1 million, I read that
$6 million. Don't push it down.
$6 million.
I got a couple million. Out of it, yeah.
But that's nothing, right, compared to now.
It's a lot. Trust me. Even now.
But you took that money and then you invested it into other technology stocks that you knew, and then you took that and then went from broadcast.com and then
boom,
everything. What were those stocks that you invested in? So we teach our kids kind of the Peter Lynch adage, invest in what you know.
Yeah.
And I think you took that.
And that's exactly what I did. I mean, look, I spent 7 years installing local area networks, writing software, doing wide area networks, and so I knew what a router, which companies' routers worked and didn't work, which companies' bridges and software worked and didn't work, which products were selling, which products weren't. And so I used that to my advantage, because back then it was a little bit easier because there weren't as many people, there weren't as many analysts covering everything, right? And so all these huge hedge funds, once they saw that I was killing it, they were like, okay, we're going to talk to this guy, and literally took my trading experience. I was making 85, 100% a year, and created a hedge fund out of it. And
really?
And then we just immediately sold it. So it turned out really well. But I did that now, and I'm telling you, the Peter Lynch experience is going to be interesting in terms of, okay, where do you shop? What do you do? What websites do you go to? But if you take the time to learn computer vision, neural networks and everything, that's how all the decisions are going. A lot of the decisions are going to be made, but all decisions are going to be influenced. And so if you really want to get to that point, if you look at some of the hottest stocks right now, NVIDIA, AMD, they're blowing up because of their ability to create processors that are geared towards artificial intelligence and supporting the data centers. If you look at what's happening with Amazon, I own a lot of Amazon stock because they are the most advanced in using all these things I've been talking about. Netflix, they started 10 years ago by using their versions of artificial intelligence back then to try to determine what's the best way to help guide people through choosing content. Through the whole discovery, they had $1 million contest. And so, artificial intelligence is going to eat the world. And so the Peter Lynch approach is great, but you have to be where the decision. You have to understand that, right? Which
is not an easy industry.
No, and plus the other problem is there's a lot fewer companies going public these days, right?
That's true.
Back when we went public 20 years ago, there were 9,000 companies that were public. Now there's under 4,000. And so there's more money chasing fewer choices, which is good in some respects, but it's good because all that money helps push the indexes up, right? Lots of money, fewer stocks, so you don't have as many choices. But it's bad in that there aren't as many new companies coming out where you can say, okay, so-and-so is going public. I know that company, most other people don't. And that might give me an edge in my investing.
Right, your Ubers and your Airbnb.
And Snapchat, right? Snapchat's supposed to go public, Airbnb and Uber. And so let's talk about big time screw ups in investing.
Yeah.
So there's a guy named Travis Kalanick, right? And he had a company called Red Swoosh. And I invested in it, and we sold it, and we made a little bit of money. His next company, he emails me, he's got this thing called Uber Cab. And he's like, you should invest in this, Mark. I'm like, I like it. It's a great idea. You're going to run into some resistance from all the taxi cab companies and all the transportation folks in different cities that are going to hate you. So, I like the idea, but I don't like the way you're pricing it. Never heard back from him again. Now, that's my problem with Travis personally, but obviously it turned into Uber. And so sometimes you make it and sometimes you miss them. But I've turned out okay.
What about, so you're here, Mark, you're talking to the next generation of kids, and I think...
no, they're the current generation.
The current generation. That's true. The next generation of workforce.
Unless artificial intelligence has evolved faster than I expected, right?
When we look ahead, I think you see countrywide there's kind of disenchantment at the political system and the millennials trying to find their voice. Would you consider entering public office? Would you consider being a voice to kind of that disenchantment?
I'd be a great president. I'd be like, let's party. That's going to be my party, the let's party. I don't know. You know, I think despite what some politicians say, we don't need to make America great again, right? Yes, there's disenchantment with Washington, but there's 1,000 politicians in Washington, right? And there's 350 million of everybody else, right? And I think it's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur.
Really?
I mean, you can go out and just watch Shark Tank. I mean, they all come from somewhere, right? Yeah. You can be in the smallest town and the biggest town, it doesn't matter. If you have an idea, you can pursue your idea and make something happen. I mean, you've never had more flexibility. Used to be you had to have a job, right? And people try to have a career. Yeah. Now you get an app, you can sell your time, right? Okay, so I'm gonna go to school. I'm gonna go play on the basketball team. I got an extra 6 hours on Saturday. You know, I'll do something on TaskRabbit, right? I'll go make some money. There's never been easier. Every kid can go and make some money. Yeah, the right?
barrier to entry is.
There's none, right? Hey, I'll run errands for Postmate, right? You know, there's 100 apps that let you sell your time, right? And so as long as you can sell your time, you can make money. Yeah. And so, you know, we look at the numbers and we talk about teenage unemployment for jobs, but you know, there's an allowance in every app. Right, in every Sell Your Time app, and that's unique. It's never been that way in the history of kids. All these guys here are like, "No, man. I mean, I had to work at a grocery store. I had to, you know, I worked at a delicatessen one time, and I was using one of the slicing machines, and I thought I had it down, and I got distracted. There's a piece of my finger in an Isley's in Pittsburgh. There's still blood everywhere in that place." Yeah, we had to have real jobs. Now it's like, okay, I'm bored, and your mom or dad or whoever says, no more NBA 2K, go make some money. Used to be, go get a job. It's a great time to be a teenager because you don't have to get a stinking job. You just got to get an app and have somebody pay you and be in the right place. So I think it's changing for the better. I think there's great opportunities. I think, you know, there's never been a better time to be able to network locally, to start a company, to learn. You know, when I was in high school, I dropped out of high school to go to college. And I had to sneak in when I got to Indiana, I snuck into graduate level statistics. And then I'll tell you the story about how my professor that I snuck into was killing it on Jeopardy, and then I ended up hiring him. But in any event, but I had to sneak into these classes to be able to challenge myself. Now, if you want to learn any of the stuff that I've been talking about, you just download an app, or you just you go to Udacity, you go wherever you. There's no limit to what you can learn. You want to learn about investing, working. I mean, literally, you can learn anything in the world that you want to learn. It's incredible. And, you know, I had to sneak in. I had the dean of Indiana University come up there, bang me on the chest. What the hell are you doing? You go back to, you know, being by the time I was halfway through my sophomore year at Indiana, I had like a year of my MBA done. And it was like, without paying for it, which didn't make him happy. But then, a quick story. So I wanted to challenge myself when I got to Indiana. I was like, how smart am I, right? So I snuck in and I took graduate level statistics, K501. And it wasn't as hard as it sounds, right? But because he used all sports analogies, you know, to teach statistics. The guy's name was Wayne Winston, and he's actually got a book called Mathletics if you want to learn about stats. And so, long story short, graduate. Years later, I buy the Mavs, and I'm watching Jeopardy, and there's my stats prof, Wayne Winston, he's killing it, right? Bam, 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 winning. Boom. I thought, oh, that's cool. And then not a month later, we go to play the Indianapolis Pacers, and I hear, Mark. And no lie, I wouldn't have recognized him if I hadn't seen him on Jeopardy, right? And there he is. Do you remember me? I taught you stats when you were 18 and you snuck into my class. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I've got some ideas on how to apply statistics to sports, just like we talked about in class back then. And so I hired him as the first full-time analytics advisor for the Mavs. Really? Yeah, back in 2000. And like so, Moneyball type stuff before Moneyball was even out. Wow. And so from sneaking into a stats class at Indiana University to Jeopardy led to running into him. And literally it was his stuff. Another quick story, the Mavs were down. We were playing the Houston Rockets in 2005, and we went down at home, right here, 2-0. They beat us here in Dallas the first 2 games, and everybody thought we're toast. Yeah. We went through his stuff, and he gave us some lineup changes, went back, ended up beating them in Game 7 here by 40 points in the biggest playoff blowout in playoff history for us back then. And so it turned out, yeah, and so it's just, the kismet of everything, but you know, if you challenge yourself, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Do you think Moneyball has taken off in basketball?
Yeah, it's
baseball?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it has, but it's almost too late. It's almost like old news for all the different artificial intelligence reasons I gave you. Now with analytics, you have to make guesses on how to weight things. You have to make guesses on what you're going to track and how you're going to track it and where the data is going to come from. And that's inherently inefficient, right? Because you just have to keep on going through all these iterations. How does it, so if I track deflections, if I track this, if I track speed, if I track that, how does it correlate to results? Yeah. And you try it, and then it doesn't work, and then everybody else is trying the same thing. So even if you get it marginally right, when everybody else realizes that and tries the same thing, it becomes an efficient market, right? The random walk down Main Street, and down Wall Street rather, and it all balances out. So I always try to keep on pushing the envelope.
Yeah. I don't think so. We have Mark Cuban. We have so Grant was a finalist on the stock pitch competition last year. So what we do is for Young Investor Society, we teach business principles through the lens of stocks.
You wrote this. Good for you, Grant.
And Grant and Aya, who's at Agora Hills, wrote this report on Pfizer. You ended up getting a
good for you
internship after this.
An analyst in the making.
Yep.
Nice. Now, what I would tell you then is it's good to learn on traditional companies like Pfizer, right? But I would go to, and even though the data may not be as readily available, I would do your best on writing a prospective analyst report on Snapchat, right? Or I would write, a high school student's perspective report on Twitter, right? Because when everybody has the same information, it's really hard to package it uniquely, right? Which I'm sure you ran into. What can I say that really makes me stand out, right? And so you went through organizational, and you used your PowerPoint, your graphing skills to make it look good, right? But find the companies that you may have an edge. Right? You use social media, right? And you'll have a different perspective than I would about social media, than James would. And so using your unique perspective is what I did when I started, investing in stocks. And so what is it that you think Twitter is missing, right? Here's a high school kid's analysis of Twitter, right? What other companies, make a list of the public companies whose products you use that you think you use differently because you're in high school or because you're 18. And the reason I tell you that is because every analyst who writes about a company, they look at the numbers and they want to hear from people like you to get a different perspective, right? So use your unique perspective, and I would tell anybody else that's out there, use your unique perspective and combine it with some of the traditional approaches that you've done here, and you'll be able to accomplish more, because you don't want to just do what everybody else has done, right? I say it all the time. If I don't want to hear about the Uber of something, right? I don't want to hear about the Twitter of something, right? I want to hear about something that said, wow, that's pretty cool. I never thought of that, and those are the things that really end up standing out. But all these new up and coming ideas, private or public companies, starting to write about them from a high school student's perspective or a teenager's perspective, That's a unique perspective that people will pay attention to, and that you can publish, you can create a newsletter, you can create a website, and people will want to know more.
Great. Awesome.
Good job.
Thank you. So Mark, this has been just a pleasure. This has been absolutely an honor.
My pleasure.
for
I
us.
enjoyed it. Yeah.
I guess the last question for me would be, you know, we have kids watching in and dialing in. What are your impressions of Young Investor Society, and what encouragement would you give them as they're starting to analyze companies?
I would tell you to understand the hierarchy of return on investment, right? We all have to understand personally and individually where we get our best return on our money. And so what I would tell you is investing in stocks is not the first place you should invest your money. Number one is pay off your debt, right? Why do you pay off your debt first? Because you're paying a credit card company 18%. It's hard to get an 18% return on your money, so pay off your debt first.
Maybe if you buy the Mavs. That's
Exactly, well, it depends. So one, pay off your debt. Number two, save some money, because the challenge in investing a lot of times is life doesn't match up to your returns, right? So you may have the best investment in the world and find yourself having to sell that investment because you have to pay for school, right? Or you have to fix your car, or whatever it may be. And the stock happens to be down. This is a down week on Wall Street, and so you have to sell to match up life. So always have some savings first. Once you get those savings in place, then take some amount and feel free to go for it, right? But you have to understand that hierarchy.
Yeah.
That's the way it works.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
But you guys are doing a good job. I mean, congrats. It's
Thanks.
exciting
Thanks.
to see what you're doing.
These
Good job,
kids
man.
are amazing.
Yeah.
They really do. I mean, one of the lessons that I've had from Young Investor Society is this next generation, these kids are amazing. And the more you push them, the more they rise to it. And I'm just
All kids are amazing, right? You just
blown away.
give them confidence to go out and give it a shot. And congrats out there, guys. Hope you all just crush it. And I hope I see you on Shark Tank.
Thanks, guys. All right, signing off.